Right, hi, and welcome to the second video in my Meadow Diary. I'm joined by my camera person today, Ellie. Say hi, Ellie.
Hey.
All right. There's been a lot of change. Of course, it's a month now, or just over a month since I did the last video. Things have changed an awful lot. You can see immediately that it's a lot lusher. There's a lot more growth here. One thing I wanted to point out, though, you can see I've sort of mown a path down the middle here to the gate at the end. For some reason, the left-hand side seems to have a lot of diversity. You can see that looks quite different. There's lots of different species in there. The right-hand side, although it's been managed in exactly the same way, has far, far less. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. I can only assume that perhaps it's down to either how this bit of land was looked after in the past. It's possible being closer to the neighbouring field that's fertiliser, some nutrients are coming over, whether that be muck or otherwise, that's making it a bit richer on that side. But there's definitely far more diversity on the left, and so that's where we're going to focus in on today. Right, I've got 3 different buttercups here in the meadow, and buttercups are one of the first things that tend to come into flower. Obviously bright yellow, very well-known species, sort of golden yellow with five petals. I actually have 3 different types of buttercup here, and superficially they all look the same. So this one here, this is the most common one in the meadow. This is called bulbous buttercup, and the ways of telling these apart is if you look at the underside of this flower, you'll see that the sepals actually fold back on the stem. In fact, there's actually one rogue sepal there that's actually clasping to the petal. But generally on bulbous buttercup, the sepals will fold back so that they're touching the stem. And so if we have a look at another one, there we are. You can see again that they're folding back there. However, if we look at this one here, this is actually meadow buttercup. Now this grows a lot taller. You can see that immediately that's taller, and it can grow much bigger still. Superficially the flowers look the same, but if you look at those sepals underneath on this particular one, you can see that those sepals are now sort of capping the flower. They're clasping from underneath. And then I have one other species of buttercup in the meadow, which isn't very common actually in here, but it's widespread and common within grasslands, and that's creeping buttercup. And that, like the meadow buttercup, it has the sepals that cup the flower. But one way you can tell them apart is that it has sort of ridges, and you probably won't be able to see that very well in this, but you can certainly feel it, ridges in the flower stem, which the meadow buttercup doesn't have. It's just completely smooth. This one tends to be more associated with sort of wetter areas. So it's sort of boggy areas within grassland. So if you've got a sort of drier soil, it will usually be either the meadow buttercup or the bulbous buttercup that you get. Right, when I last did the video blog, there's a little bit of ground ivy had come into flower, and now that seems to have sort of really taken off. There's a lot of ground ivy this year, and a lot of this purple flower that you can see in the meadow here is all ground ivy. But there are a few other things that have just recently come into flower as well, and one of them here is this. This is common vetch. Which, as its name suggests, is very common. You'll see this a lot on sort of road verges and in meadows. Has these lovely sort of bright pink flowers, and obviously those typical vetch-like leaves. There are a couple of other sort of common species which I do get here, neither of which are in flower, but we'll pick them up later in the year. And that's bush vetch and tufted vetch, and hopefully I'll be able to show you the differences between the species when they do come into flower. The other sort of, species which is here and could be confused with those, certainly in terms of leaf shape, are the tares, and a lot of the leaves that you'll see in this wood here are actually one of the tare species. This has just started coming into flower now, and you can see it's got much smaller flowers. It's a much more delicate plant in many ways, and typically you get either hairy tare or smooth tare. And you can get an idea of which it is by the number of flowers. Now this has got quite a number of flowers on here, so it's got about 6 or 7, so I would have said this is hairy tare. Smooth tare tends to have just 1 or 2.
Okay, a few things of interest here. Ribwhip plantain has now come into flower, and this is really, quite a feature across the meadow now. But also here we've got the hay rattle. Now this was just a seedling when we last did the video, and this is the first that I've seen in flower this year. It's only just come into flower in the last few days. So a very pretty yellow flower. Once it really gets going, there's a lot of this in the meadow, and it will put on quite a show, probably sometime over the next couple of weeks. And then there's another plant here that I want to just show you as well. This is oxeye daisy. So again, just tiny leaves when we last looked, but you can see the bud is coming on that, and there's quite a lot of this throughout the meadow. So again, a lot more flowers to come on show, probably over the next few weeks to a month. Right, we've also got one of the first grasses come into flower now. This is sweet vernal grass. It's a very common grass actually, and it's one of the finer ones that you find in meadows. It's reputedly the one that gives hay that lovely sort of sweet smell when they do that hay making time, that lovely smell that you get, hence its name, sweet vernal grass. It's also supposed to taste very sort of vanilla-y and quite sweet as well, so it's traditionally one that landowners would have chewed on. Kind of just tastes a bit like grass to me, to be honest. But yeah, and again, when you look across the meadow, you can see that it's it's really quite abundant in here, and one of those early flowering plants. I also just wanted to point out the hedgerow at the back as well. The hedgerows, so there's a road on the other side. That hedgerow's flailed every year by the local farmer, which I'm grateful for, because it's it saves me the work of doing so. But I don't cut it on this side. I cut it about once every 3 years or so, something like that, just to provide extra habitat. But also, of course, a lot of the fruits and the nuts that grow within hedgerows grow on second year growth or third year growth. And so by flailing every year, you're really massively diminishing the amount of food available in the autumn and winter for small mammals and birds. And you can see that some of these longer stems of the hedgerow that are coming out, they've got these white hawthorn flowers on, so that's where the berries are going to be later this year. Right, okay, well, I think we'll leave it at that for now, but I think things will change swiftly now over the next couple of weeks, so we'll come back and see what is different.